one of his friends, a local in the community, tells him, like, hey, they know you're here. Who? La Sombra Negra, which is, often reported as the only group, MS-13 and 18th Street Fear. And you'll be given something like 48 hours to 5 days to GTFO. History is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. It's 2014. There are a couple gang members together in a suburb, and it's 7 of them. They're not having a wild gangbanger night. They're not planning to maybe do a hit. They're not engaged in some sort of trafficking thing. Get this, they got together for a movie night. It's seven gang members who are just at a house, and they decided, to have some bro time and watch a movie when some unmarked cars are quietly rolling up. A group of armed men, masked up, dressed in black, armed with M16s, pops into the home and then instantly begins firing. 3 escape. The 4 others are bound, beaten, and executed, ultimately with that shot of grace at the base of the skull. A few days later, the flyers returned as well. The message was clear. La Sombra was back.
Yeah, and when they put those flyers out, it wasn't like, hey, look what we did. It was a list, where it included a list of other known gang members in the area. Like, it was a message. We're coming for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's really scary, and it's purposefully that way.
This tactic was applied multiple times. In some reports, I had heard there would just be flyers posted that didn't say anything. It's just the list of names. And you would know that these are gang members if you had lived in the community for a long time, or if you yourself were a gang member. But for everybody else, imagine you are walking somewhere, right, in your neighborhood, and you probably wouldn't clock it when you see the first flyer, and it's just a list of 12 names. But then you see the second one, and then you see a third one, and you stop maybe on the third or fourth one to look, and it's just the same. No explanation, just a list of names, and boom, your name's on that list. That's spooky, right?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the people's names that were on the list were people who had gone to the United States or been in the United States following the Civil War and then were deported back to El Salvador. So it's some of the, you'd think, and I can't confirm this and I couldn't been looking through it, but it seems to me that those are likely many of the early originators of maybe MS-13, at least within El Salvador, or at least early influential members.
Honestly, it could even go deeper than that, because it appears to imply, not prove, but imply the existence of communication between La Sombra and the officials. Because if you are a normal person, a civilian, you're going to have a tough time getting a list that reads, here are the people getting deported to this country now. They're coming to your town. Also, here are the ones that are specifically in gangs. And here's how we've documented that. It's proven. We've done the work. You don't usually get that. You don't get that info as a civilian. So there are different accounts of people who had kind of reformed, right? But even if you're reformed and you get deported, you still have the tattoos, right? You are visibly a member of the gang. One guy only escapes because one of his friends, a local in the community, tells him, hey, they know you're here. Who? La Sombra Negra, which is, often reported as the only group, MS-13 and 18th Street fear, and you'll be given something like 48 hours to 5 days to GTFO. And it's pretty clear what happens if you stay, because they're saying they already know your location, right? And there are also cases of people getting popped getting off the bus or after the plane lands, like not making it the full, not even making it home. This is real stuff. And now there's, another important tactic there is that they also allegedly, again, not provably, but allegedly took to social media through things like Facebook pages and fairly recently Twitter, allegedly, again.
Yes, massive emphasis on allegedly. We looked through some of those feeds just to see, and who knows? There's no way to tell if it's real or not, or at least if the person or persons posting are actually in La Sombra Negra.
Another evolution is occurring here because just like the criminals they're tracking, La Sombra is spreading across borders from El Salvador and the capital, San Salvador, to Honduras and Guatemala, which are, adjacent bordering countries. So they're bleeding over into the border to find these people. It reminds me of the idea, and this is not a ding on anyone, but it's an observation from the Nolan Batman movies. They say that Batman has no jurisdiction, right? Like if you are military of El Salvador or you are police of El Salvador, then legally a lot of other stuff has to happen for you to get over the border. That's not your jurisdiction. That's a completely different country. But that only counts if you obey the law. So and from their perspective, you can see older reports from people who have claimed to anonymously speak for La Sombra. Again, hard to prove. They don't see what they're doing as criminal activity. They think they are doing what they call social cleansing. And for them, it's a problem the law seems unable or unwilling to solve through official channels. We should also point out a ton of people in El Salvador, a very large part of the population, are in some way associated with gangs, such that estimates like 60, 70,000 or whatever, that would mean they outnumber Salvadoran law enforcement pretty significantly.
Oh, yeah. There's reason to fear the gangs as authorities in several of the countries, including Guatemala, Honduras, and surrounding countries where these gangs operate, not just in El Salvador. But I want to talk about one of the main reasons, Ben, I think that La Sombra Negra formed or at least came back in 2014. And it's because of an issue with the prison system there. The prisons in El Salvador are absolutely filled with gang members. But because there's so much violence between the different gangs, what they've done is separate the gangs into different facilities. So there's an MS-13 facility or facilities, and there's a Barrio 18 set of prisons. And the major issue is that there are so many concentrated members of the same organization in one prison that they can organize and they can still operate to a certain extent, even though they're all incarcerated. And, you just have to have enough corruption within that system to get messages in and out, or just through regular channels to get messages in and out. It's a real problem. So to my mind, Ben, this is, or at least began as a group of disgruntled either police officers or military officials who saw that major problem and just thought, well, we're just going to imprison more of these guys and they're just going to continue operating? No, we're going to fix it our way.
Right. Like President Bukele said recently, we're going to stop feeding your people in prison. That's a recent development, but I think it speaks to the historical aspects you're outlining.
You're absolutely right, and not to mention the fact that is that the official who declared war on the gangs, essentially?
Yes,
like open war. So then there have been a lot of casualties on the police and military side, you can imagine that every time that occurs, you're fomenting more of a desire to just eliminate gang members rather than incarcerate, right? Or even reform.
And retaliation by police forces is not something that should sound alien to anyone, unfortunately. In a lot of areas of the world, it is far from uncommon. Even if it like technically whoosh whoosh didn't happen, it is far from uncommon for colleagues of law enforcement members to visit their own retaliation, right? Instead of waiting for the courts. And you see this depicted in fiction, but that fiction is based on factual events. And again, of course, we're not saying every single member of every single law enforcement organization in the world is doing any of that stuff. Far from it. But I do think that we're asking who La Sombra is. We have to introduce some factors that don't get reported, and they're easy dots to connect. Yes, they try to hide identities. Yes, they're using unmarked vehicles, a mask, and so on. And yeah, for sure, the tactics alone are enough to persuade some people that these individuals are maybe veterans of the Civil War, maybe they're ex-military, maybe they're ex or even current police. Several have been taken to court, arrested, then let free. Why does the PNC seem so lenient? How were these tactics learned? These are things that don't get improvised on the fly. And you don't have to be you don't have to have attended West Point to recognize when some group is moving with cohesion and training. A lot of the really notorious officers of the El Salvadoran military during the Civil War, they spent time right here in Fort Benning, Georgia, in the home state of the Stuff They Don't Want You to Know podcast, at a school that is now closed down officially called the School of the Americas. Remember that one?
There it is. There it is. Watch our video on YouTube. Just search School of the Americas.
Well, quick and dirty.
I think it's still there. I hope it's
unless
still
it got
active.
pulled. Quick and dirty. What is the School of the Americas? Is it like a geography program?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that's all it is. It's a training grounds, a pretty large area there, where it's been alleged in some cases, and it's also been proven in other cases, where guerrilla tactics often are taught to people who end up going and fighting, let's say in a pre-war. Is that a good way to put it, Ben? They fight a pre-war in a place before the Civil War begins, often in South America or Central America.
Yeah. They're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Wait, they're cuckoo for cuckoo puffs, as long as we're describing coups.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
And they're coups that are often they're coups that are often supported by the U.S., and the U.S. is supporting the far right side of the political spectrum, at least in Latin America, as far as we've seen historically. So just check out School of Americas. Tell us what you think, and also recall that that Uncle Sam has sent in its own members and allies to deliver other training, right? So the School of Americas, in a very real way, took the show on the road at times. And I don't know, like, okay, so none of this is absolute proof of the identities of La Sombra Negra. None of this is absolute proof of the evolution, right, or the provenance of their training. But if you look at this, it's easy to imagine how a trained keeper of the law might grow disillusioned, like you were saying. They might get tired of the corruption. They might have that Serpico moment where they go to the chief and they say, I've got proof they did this. We can get them. And the chief is being paid off, so slides it to the left. It's dangerously easy to think that, but with all that in mind, I have to reiterate, we cannot prove this yet. But I think we can say it would be pretty fucking surprising if this was not the case.